March 17, 1943. North Atlantic convoy HX-229. A torpedo slams into the hull of SS William Eustis at 2:47 a.m. The explosion rips through the engine room. Boiling steam kills 6 men instantly. Fuel oil ignites. Flames shoot 60 feet into the black sky. Before the crew can reach lifeboats, a second torpedo hits. The ship breaks in half. 43 merchant sailors die, screaming in freezing water while German U-boats circle like sharks, picking off the next victim. That single night, wolf packs sink 13 Allied ships. Convoy HX-229 loses 140,000 tons of cargo. Food for British children, fuel for British tanks, ammunition for British soldiers, all of it sinking to the bottom of the Atlantic. Admiral Karl Donitz reads the kill reports in his Paris headquarters and smiles. His U-boats have sunk more tonnage this month than any month in the entire war. 108 ships, 627,000 tons. His submarine commanders are calling it the greatest victory in naval history. Britain has 3 weeks of food left. Winston Churchill cannot sleep. He paces the war rooms beneath London, chain-smoking cigars, staring at maps covered in red pins marking sunken ships. Later he will write that the U-boat peril was the only thing during the war that ever truly frightened him. The Battle of the Atlantic is being lost, and nobody has a solution until a road builder from California decides to do something that every admiral in the United States Navy tells him is completely insane. His name is Henry Kaiser. He has never built a warship. He has never served in the military. He has never even been to sea. But in 15 months, he will build 50 aircraft carriers. And those carriers will kill 30,000 German submariners. Here is the number that haunts me, 75%. That is the casualty rate of the German U-boat service. Higher than kamikaze pilots, higher than Soviet penal battalions, the deadliest assignment in the entire war. Most of those men died after Henry Kaiser's ugly little ships entered service. They called them Kaiser coffins. They were wrong about who would end up in the coffins. Let me take you back to the beginning. January 1942, the American East Coast. German submarines arrive off New York Harbor and find paradise. American merchant ships are sailing alone without escorts. Coastal cities refuse to dim their lights. From his periscope, a U-boat captain can see cargo ships silhouetted perfectly against the glowing shoreline of Miami, Atlantic City, New York. It is, as Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hartigen writes in his war diary, like shooting fish in a barrel. The Germans call it the second happy time. In 7 months, U-boats sink 500 ships along the American coast. Oil tankers explode within sight of beach resorts. Bodies wash up on the sand at Virginia Beach. Tourists find life jackets and debris mixed with seashells. Locals start calling it Torpedo Alley. The Navy is humiliated. Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Fleet, refuses to implement convoy systems that the British have been begging him to adopt. He considers it defensive thinking. He wants his destroyers hunting submarines, not babysitting merchant ships. His stubbornness cost lives, thousands of them. By summer 1942, the U-boats shift back to the mid-Atlantic. This is where the real killing happens. A stretch of ocean beyond the range of any land-based aircraft, 600 miles wide. Submarines can surface here in broad daylight, recharge their batteries, and wait for convoys. The Allies call it the Black Pit. The Germans call it home. This is where Donitz perfects his wolf pack tactics. Instead of individual submarines attacking alone, he coordinates groups of 10, 15, sometimes 20 U-boats against a single convoy. They shadow the merchant ships during the day, radioing positions to headquarters. At night, they surface and attack from all directions simultaneously. The escorts cannot be everywhere. Convoy SC-107 loses 15 ships in 4 nights. Convoy ONS-154 loses 14. Convoy SC-18 loses 11. The merchant sailors who survive these attacks are traumatized. They spend hours in freezing water watching their shipmates die, knowing that rescue ships might be torpedoed, too. Many refuse to sail again. Who can blame them? The mathematics are brutal. Germany is sinking ships faster than Allied yards can build them. At this rate, Britain will starve by autumn 1943. The invasion of Europe will be impossible. Germany might actually win. Something has to change. But what? The obvious answer is aircraft. Submarines are vulnerable on the surface. A single patrol plane can force a U-boat to dive, where it becomes slow and blind. The problem is range. The Black Pit is too far from any airfield. No plane can fly there, patrol for hours, and fly back. What the Allies need is a way to put aircraft in the middle of the Atlantic. They need aircraft carriers. But fleet carriers take 3 years to build. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They require thousands of skilled workers using specialized equipment. America has exactly 7 fleet carriers in service. Building enough to cover the Atlantic would take until 1946. By then, Britain would be a German colony. This is when Henry Kaiser makes his move. June 1942, Washington, D.C. Kaiser walks into the Navy Department with a proposal that makes experienced shipbuilders laugh out loud. 50 aircraft carriers, 1 year, built on merchant ship hulls using assembly line techniques. The admirals think he is joking. You have to understand who Henry Kaiser is. He is not a naval architect. He dropped out of school at 13. He started his career as a photographer. He made his fortune building roads and dams. Hoover Dam, Grand Coulee Dam, Shasta Dam. He has never designed anything that floats. But Kaiser understands something the admirals have forgotten. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. He has already proven this with Liberty ships. His yards are building cargo vessels in 42 days instead of 200. He has replaced riveting with welding. He has broken down ship construction into standardized modules that can be prefabricated separately and assembled on the ways. He has trained housewives to be welders, farmers to be crane operators, teachers to be electricians. His workers have never seen the ocean. They do not need to. They are building components. The same principle, Kaiser argues, can apply to aircraft carriers. The Navy says no. Kaiser goes over their heads directly to President Roosevelt. Roosevelt understands the stakes. He orders the Navy to give Kaiser a contract. The admirals are furious. Rear Admiral Howard Vickery of the Maritime Commission calls Kaiser's proposal unrealistic. Captain T. A. Solberg of the Bureau of Ships questions whether merchant shipyards can handle warship construction. Fleet carrier advocates argue that resources should go to real warships, not floating barges. One admiral's response becomes legend. You cannot build aircraft carriers like you build automobiles. Kaiser does exactly that. The design is ugly. The Casablanca class displaces 10,900 tons. A fleet carrier displaces 27,000. The flight deck is 512 feet long. A fleet carrier is 870 feet. The engines produce 9,000 horsepower. A fleet carrier produces 150,000. Maximum speed is 19 knots. A fleet carrier does 33. Armament is purely defensive. One 5-inch gun, a handful of 40 millimeters and 20 millimeters anti-aircraft mounts. No armor, no redundant systems, commercial-grade machinery, commercial-grade hull plating. The sailors who receive their assignments take one look at the specifications and understand immediately these ships are death traps. CV, the official designation, means carrier vessel escort. The crews invent their own meaning. Combustible, vulnerable, expendable. They call them Kaiser coffins, Jeep carriers, baby flat tops, Woolworth carriers. Nobody expects them to survive combat. Nobody expects them to win anything. November 1942, Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard begins construction. What happens next defies everything the Navy believes about shipbuilding. Hull sections are prefabricated in different parts of the yard and brought together on the building ways. Entire deck sections arrive complete with piping and wiring already installed. Welders work 3 shifts around the clock under floodlights. Every component is standardized. Every worker knows exactly what to do because the job is the same on every ship. April 5th, 1943, USS Casablanca launches. April 19th, USS Liscum Bay launches. The pace is insane. one carrier every 11 days, then every 9 days, then every week. By July 1944, all 50 carriers are complete. Average construction time, 7.2 days per ship. Traditional shipyards need 3 years to build a fleet carrier. Kaiser builds 50 Escort carriers in 15 months, but quantity means nothing if the ships cannot fight. The first combat deployment answers that question. May 1943, USS Bogue enters the North Atlantic. Her crew discovers that operating from an Escort carrier is terrifying. The flight deck pitches and rolls violently in heavy seas. The thin hull transmits every wave impact. Landing accidents happen constantly. Planes crash into the barriers. Planes roll off the deck. Planes stall on approach and plunge into the ocean. The pilots who survive the landing attempts still have to find submarines. 8-hour patrols over featureless gray ocean. Dead reckoning navigation. Unreliable radios. And, at the end, another landing attempt on a pitching deck while carrying depth charges and fuel that will explode if anything goes wrong. Lieutenant Danny Mall later describes it as controlled suicide. But then something changes. Bletchley Park. The British codebreakers have cracked German naval enigma. They can read Donit's orders to his submarines. They know where the wolf packs are gathering. They know which convoys are targeted. This intelligence goes to the Escort carriers. Instead of defending convoys, they start hunting. Admiral Royal E. Ingersoll calls it the hunter-killer doctrine. May 22, 1943. Aircraft from USS Bogue's Composite Squadron 9 spot a submarine contact. They attack. Depth charges straddle the surfaced U-boat. Water erupts in massive columns. When the spray settles, oil and debris mark where U-569 used to be. First kill. The weapon that admirals mocked has drawn blood. But this is just the beginning. In Paris, Donit stares at the loss reports and feels the first cold touch of fear. His commanders are reporting aircraft where aircraft should not exist. Hundreds of miles from land in the middle of the Black Pit, his sanctuary has been violated. March 1943, U-boats sink 108 ships. May 1943, U-boats sink 6 ships. In exchange, 15 submarines destroyed. On May 24, 1943, Donitz issues the most painful order of his career. All boats currently in the North Atlantic are to withdraw immediately. For 4 years, his submarines have ruled the Atlantic. Now they are running. The U-boat commanders who receive this order are shocked. They have been told the enemy has nothing that can threaten them. Clear's throat. They have been told the Black Pit belongs to Germany forever. They have been lied to because 50 Kaiser coffins are just entering service. One every week, each carrying 27 aircraft, each guided by intelligence that Donitz does not know exists. The hunters have become the hunted. But Donitz is not surrendering. He is regrouping. His engineers are developing acoustic torpedoes that can track propeller noise, snorkel systems that allow submarines to run submerged, radar warning receivers to detect aircraft. Between June 1943 and May 1944, German shipyards launched 237 new submarines. The war is not over. And in America, one captain is preparing something even more audacious than Kaiser's carriers. His name is Daniel V. Gallery. He commands the Escort carrier USS Guadalcanal. He does not want to sink German submarines. He wants to capture one. Naval intelligence tells him the idea is reckless, dangerous, potentially catastrophic. If the Germans discover America is trying to board their submarines, they will change every code and every cipher. Years of intelligence work will be destroyed. Gallery is directly ordered to abandon the plan. He ignores the order. In Part 2, we will watch Captain Gallery train his crew for the most audacious boarding operation since 1815. We will see him develop tactics that German commanders call impossible. We will follow 8 American sailors as they climb into a sinking submarine filled with seawater, darkness, and possibly booby traps. And we will witness the capture of U-505. The Kaiser coffins are about to become Kaiser killers. In Part 1, you watch Henry Kaiser prove the impossible. 50 Escort carriers built in 15 months. One ship every 7 days. The Kaiser coffins that admirals laughed at drew first blood when USS Bogue's aircraft destroyed U-569 in the mid-Atlantic. Admiral Donitz withdrew his wolf packs. The Atlantic suddenly belonged to America. But winning a battle is not winning a war. Here is a number that should terrify you. Between June 1943 and May 1944, Germany launched 237 new submarines, faster boats, better weapons, acoustic torpedoes that track the sound of propellers, snorkel systems that let submarines recharge batteries without surfacing. The U-boat force was not defeated. It was evolving. And in America, one captain was about to attempt something that would make naval intelligence want to court-martial him. His name was Daniel V. Gallery. He commanded the Escort carrier USS Guadalcanal. He did not want to sink German submarines. He wanted to capture one. And this is where everything gets complicated. October 1943, Washington, D.C., the nerve center of Allied anti-submarine warfare. Captain Gallery walks into the U-boat. Tracking room at Navy headquarters. This is the most secret facility in the American military. Every submarine detection, every patrol report, every decoded Enigma message flows through this room. The man waiting for him is Commander Kenneth Knowles. He runs the tracking room. He coordinates every hunter-killer operation in the Atlantic. His word can make or break any mission. Knowles does not look happy. Gallery salutes. Knowles does not return it. Captain Gallery, Knowles begins. His voice is cold, controlled. Do you understand what you are proposing? Gallery stands at attention. I want to capture a German submarine, sir. Board it before the crew can scuttle. Seize the Enigma machine and all associated materials. Knowles slams his palm on the desk. Maps scatter. Coffee spills. And do you understand what happens if you fail? He leans forward, eyes burning. If the Germans discover we are attempting to capture their submarines, they will change every code, every cipher setting, every communication protocol. We will lose everything we have built at Bletchley Park. Years of work. Thousands of lives saved by our ability to read their traffic. All of it gone because you wanted to play pirate. The silence is suffocating. Gallery does not flinch. Sir, the Germans already assume we're trying to capture their boats. Every U-boat commander has standing orders to scuttle rather than surrender. The risk exists whether we attempt boarding or not. He pauses, chooses his next words carefully. But the reward of success exceeds anything we might lose in failure. Current Enigma settings, updated tactical directives, technical documentation on their new acoustic torpedoes. The intelligence value would be incalculable. Knowles stares at him for a long moment, then speaks the words that should end Gallery's career. Your request is denied. You will conduct standard hunter-killer operations. You will sink submarines. You will not attempt boarding under any circumstances. His voice drops to a whisper. That is a direct order from naval intelligence. Violated, and I will personally ensure your court-martial. Dismissed. Gallery salutes, turns, walks out, and begins planning how to do it anyway. But he needs allies, powerful ones, the kind who can protect him from Knowles when everything goes wrong. He finds one in Admiral Royal E. Ingersoll. Ingersoll commands the entire Atlantic Fleet. He invented the hunter-killer doctrine that transformed escort carrier operations. More importantly, he understands that aggressive innovation wins wars. Sometimes the best officers are the ones who break the rules. Gallery makes his case in Ingersoll's office. The intelligence value of a captured Enigma, the psychological impact on German submariners, the possibility of seizing technical documentation about new weapon systems, and his core argument. Proper preparation can make boarding feasible. Ingersoll listens without interrupting. When Gallery finishes, the Admiral asks one question. Can you do it without getting your task crew killed? Gallery's answer is immediate. I can train my crews until boarding becomes reflex. We will practice until every sailor knows exactly what to do in the 60 seconds between a submarine surfacing and its crew completing scuttling procedures. We will have damage control parties ready to seal hatches and stop flooding. He meets Ingersoll's eyes. We will rehearse until failure becomes impossible. Ingersoll nods slowly, then makes a decision that naval intelligence will never officially approve. You have 6 months to prepare. If an opportunity presents itself, and only if conditions are favorable, you may attempt boarding. He leans forward. But understand this clearly, Captain. If you fail, if the Germans learn what we are doing, I will deny any knowledge of this conversation. You will face Knowles alone. Gallery smiles. That is more than he expected. It is enough. November 1943, Bermuda. Task Group 22.3 begins training. Gallery has assembled his team. The escort carrier USS Guadalcanal. 5 destroyer escorts: Pillsbury, Pope, Flaherty, Chatelaine, Jenks. Crews who have no idea what their captain is planning. The first challenge is tactical. Standard depth charge attacks destroy submarines completely. Gallery needs his crews to disable them instead. Damage dive planes and rudders. Crack pressure holes enough to force surfacing without causing catastrophic flooding. The weapon is the Hedgehog. 24 contact fuse projectiles fired in a pattern ahead of the attacking ship. Unlike depth charges that explode at preset depths, Hedgehog rounds only detonate on direct contact. A skilled commander can place them exactly where he wants. Gallery drills his destroyer escort captains relentlessly. Approach angles, firing solutions, target selection. They practice until they can hit a submarine's conning tower without destroying the entire boat. Then come the boarding parties. Lieutenant Albert David volunteers to lead the first team. He is 23 years old, damage control officer aboard USS Pillsbury. He possesses either extraordinary courage or complete inability to recognize danger. Gallery is not sure which. He does not care. David selects 8 men. They train in the waters off Bermuda, using a captured Italian submarine as their practice target. Again and again they approach in a whaleboat, climb the slippery hull, drop through the conning tower hatch into darkness, locate scuttling valves, pretend to close them, gather imaginary documents, race against stopwatches. The first attempts are disasters. Men fall from the hull. Boarding parties get lost in unfamiliar compartments. Simulated flooding overwhelms damage control efforts. Gallery watches each failure, demands they try again. After 3 months, boarding time drops from 8 minutes to 4, then 3, then 90 seconds. From whaleboat alongside to first man through the hatch, 90 seconds. But training is not combat. Gallery knows everything will be different when German sailors are shooting at his men, when the submarine is actually flooding, when booby traps might be waiting in the darkness. January 1944. Task Group 22.3 deploys on its first operational patrol. Gallery's orders are standard. Hunt submarines in the Central Atlantic. Kill everything you find. But every officer in the task group knows the real mission. They're looking for a submarine to capture. The first engagement comes January 16th. Guadalcanal's aircraft detect you. 5:44 on the surface. Gallery's destroyers close for attack. Hedgehog rounds find their mark. The submarine dives, trailing oil. More attacks follow. Explosions rock the deep water. Debris surfaces. U-544 is destroyed with all hands. 53 German sailors dead. No possibility of boarding. Gallery is disappointed, but not discouraged. The attack proved his destroyers can execute precision strikes. Next time, he will be more patient. April 9th. Task Group 22.3 finds you. 515 southwest of Madeira. This is a different kind of target. U-515's commander is Captain Lieutenant Werner Henke, one of Germany's most decorated submarine aces. 25 Allied ships sunk. The Iron Cross with oak leaves. A crew of veterans who know exactly how to fight. Gallery's aircraft attack at dawn. Avengers drop depth charges. Wildcats strafe the conning tower. Henke crash dives, but the damage is done. His boat is leaking. His dive planes are jammed. After hours of depth charge attacks, U-515 surfaces. Gallery sees his opportunity. He orders Pillsbury to close for boarding. But Henke is too experienced, too fast. German sailors pour onto the deck, opening scuttling valves as they abandon ship. U-515's bow rises toward the sky. The submarine slides beneath the waves in less than 2 minutes. 44 German sailors are captured, including Henke himself, but the submarine is gone. 8,000 foot down along with its Enigma machine and code books. Gallery comes agonizingly close. He spends the next 2 months refining tactics. His boarding parties need to be faster. His aircraft need to suppress German crews before they can reach scuttling valves. Every second of delay means losing another submarine to the depths. June 4th, 1944. West of the Cape Verde Islands. 2 days before D-Day. Gallery knows nothing of the Normandy invasion. His focus is entirely on the contact his aircraft have just reported. U-505, Type IXE submarine. Commander Oberleutnant Zur C. Harold Lang. Homeward bound from West Africa. Crew exhausted. Fuel low. Lang believes he is safely beyond Allied patrol range. He is wrong. 1,110 hours. Wildcat fighter spot U-505's periscope cutting through calm seas. The submarine is running just below the surface, recharging batteries. The pilot dives immediately, strafes the water with .50 caliber machine guns to mark the position. 3 Avengers join within minutes. Depth charges explode around you. 505. The submarine surfaces. Gallery watches from Guadalcanal's bridge. Gray hull, streaming water. Conning tower intact, but damaged. German sailors climbing through the hatch. Some wounded, some wearing life jackets. All of them abandoning ship. Gallery keys his radio. All escorts close on target. Prepare boarding parties. This is not a drill. Chatelaine reaches the submarine first. Her Hedgehog attack cracked U-505's pressure hull and jammed rudder. The boat is circling slowly to port. Unmanned, sinking by the stern. Pillsbury's whaleboat is already in the water. Lieutenant Albert David stands at the bow. 8 men behind him. They have practiced this 100 times. Now they will do it for real. 11:30 hours. The whaleboat comes alongside. The submarine's deck is slippery with seawater and oil. David grabs the conning tower railing, pulls himself up. Below him, through the open hatch, he hears water rushing into flooded compartments. The smell of diesel fuel and battery acid fills the air. Everything they've been told says the submarine is probably booby-trapped. Everything they know says it is definitely sinking. Every instinct screams to get away before the boat drags them down. David goes through the hatch anyway. The control room is chaos. Emergency lights cast red shadows. Water is ankle-deep and rising. Electrical panels spark and smoke. Somewhere below, pumps are fighting a losing battle against the ocean. David sends his men in different directions. Find the scuttling valves. Find the Enigma. Find anything that looks important. They have maybe 5 minutes before you. 5:05 goes to the bottom. Torpedo man's mate Arthur Nispel finds the main scuttling valve in the forward torpedo room. It is open, seawater gushing through at hundreds of gallons per minute. Nispel dives under the surface, fighting the current, his hands searching for the valve wheel. His lungs burning, his eyes stinging from salt water. He finds the wheel, pulls, the valve begins to close. The flooding slows. In the radio room, radio man Stanley Woodowicke find what they came for. The Enigma machine sits on its mounting bracket, undamaged, code books stacked on the table, apparently prepared for destruction, but never thrown overboard. Woodowicke grabs everything he can carry. David coordinates the chaos. More boarding party members arrive. They seal hatches, start pumps, shore up damaged bulkheads. Against all probability, U-505 stops sinking. On Guadalcanal's bridge, Gallery watches something no American naval officer has witnessed since 1815. His men have captured an enemy warship at sea. The next several days become the strangest voyage in naval history. Guadalcanal takes U-505 under tow. Aircraft maintain patrol overhead. Destroyer escort screen against any German rescue attempt. The intelligence hull exceeds anything Gallery imagined. Updated Enigma rotor settings. Recent tactical directives. Technical manuals for German acoustic torpedoes. Maps showing U-boat patrol areas. The material will save thousands of Allied lives in the war's final year. Gallery receives the Distinguished Service Medal. Lieutenant Albert David receives the Medal of Honor. The crew of U-505, 58 men captured without a single American casualty, spend the rest of the war in a special prisoner camp, isolated to prevent word of the capture reaching Germany. The secret holds. German naval intelligence never learns that U-505 was captured rather than sunk. Enigma settings remain unchanged. The Allies continue reading U-boat traffic until the war's end. Task Group 22.3 has proven that the Kaiser coffins can do more than kill submarines. They can capture them, but the celebration is premature. In Berlin, German naval intelligence is investigating. How are the Americans tracking U-boats so precisely? A spy in the command structure? A compromised communication system? A technology they have not detected? The investigation will never find the truth about Enigma, but it will find something else. Something that puts the captured intelligence at risk. Something that threatens to expose the greatest secret of the Atlantic War. Because somewhere in a German prisoner of war camp, a captured American pilot is about to make a mistake. A mistake that could reveal everything. In Part 3, we will follow the race to protect the U-505 secret. We will watch German intelligence close in on the truth. And we will witness what happens when the Kaiser coffins face their ultimate test. An enemy who finally understands what they are fighting against. The hunters are about to become the hunted. Henry Kaiser built 50 escort carriers in 15 months. Captain Daniel Gallery captured U-505 and its Enigma machine. The hunter-killer groups drove German wolf packs from the North Atlantic. Admiral Donitz withdrew his submarines in May 1943. The Atlantic suddenly seemed safe, but withdrawal is not surrender. Here is a number that defines what came next. Between June 1943 and May 1944, German shipyards launched 237 new submarines, faster boats, better weapons, acoustic homing torpedoes that track the sound of propellers, snorkel systems that let submarines run diesel engines while submerged, radar warning receivers to detect approaching aircraft. The U-boat force was not defeated. It was evolving, and Admiral Donitz was preparing a counterattack that would test the Kaiser coffins as never before. This was no longer an experiment. This was total war. In the concrete bunkers of U-boat headquarters at Berlin-Caral, Donitz examines lost reports with growing desperation. His submarines are being found with impossible precision, hunted in areas that should be beyond Allied patrol range, destroyed at rates that defy mathematical probability. Korvettenkapitän Heinz Bonatz, head of the B-Dienst Signals Intelligence Section, assembles his analysts for an emergency assessment. The question is simple. How are the Americans finding our submarines? The possibilities are terrifying. A compromised communication system, a spy in the command structure, some unknown detection technology that renders submarines visible wherever they operate. Bonatz examines each possibility. His analysts note a disturbing pattern. American hunter-killer groups appear in exactly the right locations at exactly the right times. Their movements suggest foreknowledge of U-boat positions. Either the Americans have broken Enigma, which German cryptographers insist is impossible, or they possess detection capabilities that exceed anything Germany has imagined. Bonatz recommends immediate investigation. Donitz orders tactical changes. His submarines will no longer operate in wolf packs, requiring extensive radio communication. Individual boats will patrol independently. They will attack at night using acoustic torpedoes, and they will target the escort carriers themselves. The order is explicit. Sink the baby flat tops. Without their aircraft, the hunter-killer groups will be blind. The Atlantic will belong to the U-boat again. September 1943, the counterattack begins. Convoy ONS 18 steams westward from Britain. 19 U-boats converge over 3 days. They carry the new Zonkenig acoustic torpedoes, weapons designed specifically to home on the propeller noise of escort vessels. The results are devastating. HMS Lagan is hit first, then HMS Polyanthus, then HMCS St. Croix. 3 escort ships torpedoed in a single engagement. The acoustic weapons work exactly as German engineers promised. The defenders have become targets, but the escort carriers strike back with overwhelming force. Aircraft from HMS Fencer and USS Card saturate the operational area. They fly continuous patrols despite brutal weather. They attack every submarine contact with depth charges, rockets, and acoustic homing torpedoes of their own. The American Mark 24 Fido is so secret that aircrew are forbidden to mention its existence. It tracks the sound of submarine propellers underwater. 4 U-boats destroyed in the convoy battle. Many more damaged. Exchange ratio. 3 escorts lost for submarines destroyed. Convoy delivered intact. Donitz calls it a tactical victory. His staff knows better. Losing 4 submarines to sink 3 escorts is unsustainable mathematics. But this is not the only crisis facing the Kaiser coffins. November 24, 1943. The Gilbert Islands, Pacific Theater. USS Liscum Bay operates near Macon Atoll. A single torpedo from Japanese submarine I-175 strikes her starboard side. The torpedo penetrates the aircraft bomb storage compartment. The explosion is catastrophic. Liscum Bay's magazine detonates in a massive fireball that splits the ship nearly in half. The escort carrier sinks in 23 minutes. Of 916 men aboard, 644 die. It is the deadliest single American naval loss since Pearl Harbor. The tragedy validates every fear critics raised about escort carriers. These ships are floating bombs. A single torpedo penetrating the thin hull can reach ammunition storage and fuel tanks that fleet carriers protect with armor. The Kaiser coffins have no such protection. Questions erupt in Washington. Are escort carriers worth the risk? Should construction continue? Is the entire program a mistake? Navy brass who opposed escort carriers from the beginning see an opportunity. Some voices suggest the Liscum Bay disaster proves that real shipyards should build real warships. Henry Kaiser himself comes under criticism. His welded hulls, his commercial-grade machinery, his rush to build quantity over quality. For a moment, the entire program hangs in the balance. But the debate ends the only way it can, with results. May 1944, the Atlantic becomes a killing ground, not for Allied convoys, for German submarines. The statistics turn grotesque. May 29, 1944. North Atlantic Task Group 21.11 operates around USS Block Island. The escort carrier has been hunting submarines for 3 months. Her aircraft and escorting destroyers have already sunk for U-boats. Her crew has developed aggressive tactics that put them in the water whenever contact is made. 2013 hours. Sonar operator aboard destroyer Escort Aarons detects something wrong. A contact close. Moving fast. U-549 has been stalking the task group for hours. Her commander, Captain Lieutenant Detlev Krankenhagen, is on his first war patrol. He has watched the carrier's aircraft fly overhead all day, waiting for darkness, waiting for his chance. 3 torpedoes leave U-549's tubes. The first strikes Block Island's bow. The second hits her stern 4 seconds later, penetrates an oil tank and ammunition magazine. A third torpedo follows. Block Island is finished. Captain Francis Hughes orders abandon ship at 2,140 hours. The crew evacuates despite fires spreading through the hangar deck. 6 men die in the torpedo explosions. The remaining 951 reach life rafts. Block Island sinks at 2,155 hours. The only American aircraft carrier lost to submarine action in the Atlantic during the entire war. But U-549's triumph lasts less than an hour. Destroyer Escort Eugene E. Elmore obtains sonar contact as the submarine attempts to escape. 2,127 hours. Hedgehog mortars arc through the darkness. Find their target. The explosions are final. U-549 dies with her entire crew. 57 German sailors killed to sink 1 escort carrier. 1 carrier that will be replaced within 2 weeks. The mathematics of attrition have reached their ultimate expression. Germany destroys escort carriers at the cost of submarines and crews. America builds carriers faster than U-boats can sink them. The exchange is fatal for Germany. Acceptable for America. June 1944. D-Day. Allied forces land at Normandy. The invasion demands absolute control of the English Channel and western approaches. Every U-boat that might threaten the invasion fleet must be found and destroyed. Escort carriers deploy in unprecedented numbers. 11 American CVs operate in the Atlantic by July. British escort carriers add their aircraft to the constant patrols. The mid-Atlantic gap that had been a U-boat sanctuary becomes their graveyard. The statistics become grotesque. In June 1944, hunter-killer groups account for 60% of all U-boats sunk by American forces in the Atlantic. Not convoy escorts, not land-based patrol aircraft. The Kaiser coffins and their destroyer screens have become the primary submarine killers. USS Bogue's task group destroys 12 U-boats over 15 months. USS Card's group sinks 11. USS Guadalcanal's group kills 5 and captures 1. USS Croatan, USS Core, USS Santee. Each adds to the mounting German losses. The individual engagements blur together into a campaign of systematic destruction. July 17, 1944. USS Anzio aircraft locate U-509 on the surface west of the Azores. Depth charges straddle the boat. The submarine attempts to dive. More attacks follow. Oil and debris mark the grave of 46 German sailors. August 3, 1944. Task Group 22.5 finds U-804 northeast of the Cape Verde Islands. Coordinated attacks by aircraft and destroyer escorts continue for 6 hours. The submarine is forced to surface. Her crew abandons ship. U-804 sinks with scuttling valves open. August 20th, 1944. USS Card's group catches U-1229, attempting to land agents on the coast of Maine. Aircraft attack immediately. Destroyer escorts close for the kill. The submarine never completes its mission. All hands lost. The pattern repeats across the Atlantic. U-boat detected. U-boat attacked. U-boat destroyed. German commanders who survive record the psychological impact. Oberleutnant Herbert Werner, commanding U-415, captures the desperation. Every patrol after May 1943 was a survival exercise disguised as a military operation. We understood that Allied technology had rendered our methods obsolete. We could barely surface to charge batteries without aircraft appearing overhead. We could not approach convoy routes without encountering hunter-killer groups that pursued us relentlessly. Werner survives the war. Most of his colleagues do not. The statistics tell a story that Donitz cannot deny. Of approximately 40,000 men who served in German submarines during World War II, 30,000 died. 75% casualties, higher than any other military service in the war. The majority of those deaths occurred after the escort carriers closed the mid-Atlantic gap, after the hunter-killer doctrine transformed defensive convoy protection into offensive submarine hunting, after the Kaiser coffins that professional naval officers dismissed as inadequate proved they could dominate the Atlantic. News of the successes spreads through the Allied military. Newspapers that once questioned the escort carrier program now celebrate. The vessels that admirals called combustible, vulnerable, and expendable have become the most effective anti-submarine weapons in history. Captain Gallery receives promotion after promotion. His willingness to challenge conventional doctrine has achieved results that validate every risk. Henry Kaiser receives the Presidential Medal for Merit. His shipyards have demonstrated that industrial capacity can solve military problems in ways traditional thinking never imagined. The 50 Casablanca-class carriers built in 15 months at a rate of 1 per week have proven something profound. Adequate weapons in overwhelming numbers defeat superior weapons in limited quantities. By September 1944, the Battle of the Atlantic is mathematically won, not officially over. U-boats continue sailing, continue dying. But the strategic outcome is no longer in doubt. German submarines cannot sink ships faster than Allied yards build them. They cannot survive long enough to accomplish missions. They have become sacrifices sent to sea because withdrawal would free Allied resources for other purposes. Donitz understands this reality. He continues operations anyway. Every escort carrier hunting U-boats in the Atlantic is not supporting the invasion of Europe. Every destroyer escort prosecuting submarine contacts is not bombarding German coastal defenses. The U-boat force has failed its strategic mission, but it continues serving a tactical purpose. The cost is measured in young men who climb into steel cylinders knowing they will probably never return. The Kaiser coffins that everyone mocked have strangled the most effective submarine force in history. 30,000 German submariners dead, most of them killed by 50 ugly little ships that professional naval officers said could never accomplish anything meaningful. But what happened to the men who built these vessels? What happened to the crews who served aboard them? What became of the captured U-505 and its secrets? The war ended in May 1945. The Kaiser coffins were decommissioned within 2 years. Most were scrapped, their steel recycled into automobiles and construction materials. The ships themselves vanished, but their legacy endured. And there is one final detail that most people who hear this story never learn. U-505, the submarine that Captain Gallery captured on June 4, 1944, did not go to the scrapyard. It did not rust away in a naval reserve fleet. It did not sink into the Atlantic, carrying its secrets to the ocean floor. U-505 is still here. In Part 4, we will discover what happened to the Kaiser coffins after the war ended. We will learn the fate of Henry Kaiser, Daniel Gallery, and the men who served aboard the ships everyone called coffins. And we will visit a submarine that still exists today, 70 years after it was supposed to sink beneath the Atlantic waves. This story has one chapter left, and it may be the most important one of all. From a road builder who had never designed a warship to 50 escort carriers that strangled Germany's submarine force. From an idea that admirals called impossible to the weapon that won the Battle of the Atlantic. Henry Kaiser proved that innovation does not require credentials. Captain Daniel Gallery proved that aggressive action defeats cautious doctrine. And the crews of the Kaiser coffins proved that courage matters more than the quality of your equipment. 30,000 German submariners died during World War II, most of them killed by weapons their admirals had laughed at. But what happened to the men who built these ships? What happened to the crews who served aboard them? What became of the captured U-505 and its secrets? This story has one twist left, and it may be the most surprising one of all, because success sometimes comes with a price that nobody expects. Henry J. Kaiser never built another warship after the war ended. His Vancouver shipyard, which had produced 50 escort carriers at a rate of 1 per week, transitioned back to civilian construction. Clear's throat, Kaiser turned his attention to healthcare, founding Kaiser Permanente. He built automobiles. He constructed housing developments that shaped post-war American suburbs. When asked about his wartime contribution, Kaiser was characteristically blunt. We built what the Navy needed when they needed it. That was the job. We did the job. He received the Presidential Medal for Merit, the highest civilian honor available during wartime. He was celebrated as an industrial genius who had applied assembly line thinking to shipbuilding. But Kaiser himself seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. The workers did it, he would say. I just organized them. Kaiser died in 1967 at age 85. His obituaries mentioned the Hoover Dam, the Grand Coulee Dam, the Kaiser healthcare system. The escort carriers received a paragraph, sometimes two. The man who built the weapons that won the Atlantic War was remembered primarily for what he did after the war ended. Captain Daniel V. Gallery lived long enough to see his achievement recognized and then questioned. Immediately after capturing U-505, Gallery was promoted and decorated. The Distinguished Service Medal acknowledged what no American naval officer had accomplished since 1815. He had taken an enemy warship as a prize at sea. But Gallery was also controversial. His willingness to disobey naval intelligence directives, his aggressive pursuit of boarding operations that risked compromising Enigma secrets, his self-promotional instincts. Some colleagues admired his boldness. Others considered him a reckless publicity seeker who endangered critical intelligence operations for personal glory. Gallery retired as a rear admiral in 1960. He spent his remaining years writing books about naval history and submarine warfare. His memoir, Clear the Decks, became a bestseller. He appeared on television programs discussing World War II naval operations, and he fought publicly to have U-505 preserved as a museum exhibit rather than scrapped. When Gallery died in 1977, he left behind a complicated legacy. He had achieved something remarkable. He had also made choices that senior officers questioned for decades afterward. Lieutenant Albert David, the young officer who led the boarding party into the sinking submarine, received the Medal of Honor for his actions on June 4, 1944. He was 23 years old. He had climbed through a conning tower hatch into a vessel that might have been booby-trapped. That was certainly flying, that German doctrine said, should kill anyone foolish enough to board. David survived the war, but he did not live to see old age. He died in 1945, just months after Germany surrendered, from complications following routine surgery. The Medal of Honor winner who captured U-505 never had the chance to tell his grandchildren what he had done. The 8 men who followed David through the hatch received Navy Crosses and Silver Stars. They returned to civilian life, raised families, worked ordinary jobs. Most never spoke publicly about what they had accomplished. The boarding of U-505 became a story their children heard, sometimes believed, sometimes dismissed as wartime exaggeration. But the real legacy of the escort carriers was not measured in medals or memoirs. It was measured in what came after. The 50 Casablanca-class carriers that Kaiser built were decommissioned within 2 years of the war's end. These purpose-built submarine hunters had no role in a peacetime navy that emphasized fleet carriers and amphibious operations. USS Casablanca herself, the lead ship that had proven the concept, was scrapped in 1947. Her steel was recycled into automobiles and construction materials. Most of her sisters met similar fates. By 1960, only one Casablanca-class carrier remained in American service. She was decommissioned that same year. The ships themselves vanished, but what they represented endured. The escort carrier concept evolved into something more sophisticated after World War II. The lessons learned about air power projection from small platforms influenced naval architecture for generations. Light aircraft carriers, helicopter assault ships, modern amphibious carriers, all trace their ancestry to the Kaiser coffins that admirals once dismissed. During the Korean War, escort carriers provided close air support for ground troops and anti-submarine patrols in waters where North Korean and Soviet submarines might operate. In Vietnam, small carriers launched helicopter operations that would have been impossible from larger fleet units. The flexibility that made escort carriers valuable in 1944 remained relevant decades later. Today, every major navy operates vessels that embody the escort carrier philosophy. Ships optimized for specific missions rather than general fleet operations. Platforms that sacrifice size and sophistication for numbers and availability. The principle that adequate equipment in sufficient quantities defeats superior equipment in limited numbers continues shaping military procurement worldwide. The statistics tell the final story. Escort carriers and their aircraft sank or assisted in sinking 53 German submarines during World War II. Hunter-killer groups protected convoys carrying millions of tons of supplies to Europe. The closure of the Mid-Atlantic Gap allowed the buildup that made D-Day possible. Historians estimate that escort carriers saved between 50,000 and 100,000 Allied lives by shortening the Battle of the Atlantic. 100,000 lives because a road builder decided to build aircraft carriers like automobiles. But the lesson of the Kaiser coffins extends far beyond military history. It is a lesson about innovation, about institutions, about the courage required to challenge conventional wisdom. Every military establishment resists change. The admirals who rejected Kaiser's proposal were not stupid. They were experienced professionals who understood ship design better than any civilian contractor. They were also wrong. Their expertise blinded them to possibilities that an outsider could see clearly. They knew all the reasons why escort carriers would fail. They had forgotten how to imagine ways they might succeed. This pattern repeats throughout history. Billy Mitchell was court-martialed for insisting that aircraft could sink battleships. He was right. Hyman Rickover was nearly forced out of the Navy for pushing nuclear propulsion. He was right. John Boyd was marginalized for advocating energy maneuverability theory in fighter design. He was right. The innovators who change warfare are rarely welcomed by the institutions they serve. They succeed anyway, because sometimes being right matters more than being popular. And because sometimes the outsider sees what the expert cannot. Henry Kaiser was a road builder who revolutionized shipbuilding. Daniel Gallery was a captain who disobeyed direct orders. Albert David was a 23-year-old lieutenant who climbed into a sinking submarine. None of them fit the profile of a military hero. All of them changed history. And there is one final detail that most people who hear this story never learn. U-505, the submarine that Captain Gallery captured on June 4, 1944, did not go to the scrapyard. It did not rust away in a naval reserve fleet. It did not sink into the Atlantic, carrying its secrets to the ocean floor. U-505 is still here. After the war, Gallery campaigned tirelessly to preserve the captured submarine as a museum exhibit. He argued that U-505 represented unique historical significance. The only German submarine captured by American forces, the only Enigma machine taken from a Type 9 boat, a physical artifact of the Battle of the Atlantic that future generations could see and touch. The Navy resisted. Maintaining a German submarine seemed inappropriate in the immediate post-war period. Storage costs were significant. Other priorities demanded attention. Gallery refused to accept rejection. He lobbied politicians. He wrote articles. He gave speeches. He approached the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago with a proposal that seemed almost as audacious as capturing the submarine in the first place. Bring U-505 to Chicago. Display it as a permanent exhibit. Let Americans see what their fathers and brothers had fought against. The logistics were extraordinary. U-505 had to be transported from the East Coast through the St. Lawrence Seaway, across the Great Lakes, and into Chicago's harbor. The submarine then had to be moved overland through city streets to the museum's location in Hyde Park. On September 25, 1954, U-505 completed its final voyage. The submarine the German engineers had built to terrorize Allied convoys was pulled through Chicago on a massive trailer. Crowds lined the streets to watch. It came to rest beside the Museum of Science and Industry, where it has remained for 70 years. Today, you can walk through U-505. You can stand in the control room where Lieutenant Albert David descended through the conning tower hatch. You can see the torpedo tubes that might have sunk merchant ships if the submarine had completed its patrol. You can touch the steel hull that Kaiser's Escort carriers forced to the surface. More than 30 million people have visited U-505 since it went on display. Schoolchildren learn about submarine warfare. Veterans bring grandchildren to show them what the war was really like. Historians study the boat's technology and construction. The submarine that was supposed to sink beneath the Atlantic waves became the most visited captured enemy vessel in history. And here is the detail that completes the story. U-505's final resting place sits approximately 20 miles from the shipyards where Kaiser built the Liberty ships that supplied the Atlantic convoys. The submarine that hunted those convoys and the industrial complex that kept them sailing exist within the same metropolitan region. Hunter and hunted, predator and prey. German engineering and American industrial capacity. They ended up neighbors. From a road builder with an idea that admirals called impossible to 50 escort carriers that changed the course of history. Henry Kaiser proved that innovation does not require credentials, that adequate weapons in sufficient numbers defeat superior weapons in limited quantities, that industrial democracy can outproduce military aristocracy when the stakes are high enough. The Kaiser coffins sank 53 German submarines. They closed the mid-Atlantic air gap that had been the U-boat's sanctuary. They transformed defensive convoy protection into aggressive submarine hunting. They helped win a battle that Churchill called the only thing that truly frightened him during the entire war. And they did it while professional naval officers insisted they were too slow, too vulnerable, too poorly designed to accomplish anything meaningful. 30,000 German submariners died during World War II. Many of them were killed by weapons that their admirals had laughed at, ships that serious navies would never build, vessels crewed by men whose survival prospects seemed marginal at best. Those men survived. They won, and their story deserves to be remembered. If you know other examples of crazy ideas that changed military history, share them in the comments. The Kaiser coffins were just one of dozens of innovations that emerged from World War II. Ideas that experts rejected until reality proved them wrong. Subscribe to discover more stories like this one. The overlooked moments that shaped the world. The ordinary people who accomplished extraordinary things. The lessons that history teaches if we take the time to listen. Because 70 years ago, a construction contractor convinced a skeptical Navy to let him build aircraft carriers like automobiles. They called his ships Kaiser coffins. They said the crews were sailing to their deaths in vessels built too cheaply to survive combat. Those crews proved something that matters beyond any specific battle or war. They proved that courage and industrial capacity can overcome any obstacle. That innovation matters more than tradition when survival is at stake. That the people who change history are often the ones that history initially dismisses. The Kaiser coffins became Kaiser killers, and the Atlantic, which Germany had dominated, became their graveyard instead. That is the power of refusing to accept impossible.